no sound, basically. So hopefully you can hear us.
Yeah, and see us.
Yeah. So I've got a little problem with Darren's feed. He keeps freezing. So just see how it is for everybody else. So apologies about the wait. We've only got 7 people in because I think they've all got bored.
Well, that's okay. We'll start and see who shows up.
Okay. Kathy's arm candy says, "Got my restored SUs back from Darren without having to slap you this time, whatever that means." Excellent work. Almost rather mount them on the wall. So I think he's very happy about that, Darren.
Yeah, those are the carburetors I featured in that short, as well as the slightly longer video last week of the twin HS2s I've been dealing with.
Yep.
Yeah, they got a full vapor helm treatment, so they were really nice.
Okay. RC Minis, hi everyone. Yeah, we're having a minor issue with our audio. That's right. We might still be having issues yet, but 1380 Flip says hi. Dan Robert Shaw says evening chaps. Evening Darren.
Yeah.
Stefan Mini, hi guys. Yeah, there's 1921. There's a few people coming in there.
Nice.
I think we finally managed to get some sort of traction.
Well, at least we were able to get connected. So, since we've been talking about the twin carb stuff, obviously we've been very busy. You know, it's springtime.
Yes. So, do you want to give an update on where you are, Darren?
Well, I've been busy doing those twin carbs. I've been doing. I have another Cooper S here in for tuning work that I've talked a little bit about. You saw the carburetors that carry scores, so I've been busy getting those rebuilt. I will be doing a video shortly on the tuning process. But in the meantime, I put up a bunch of videos recently about a Weber tune that I had to do recently, and that was a very, very interesting tune. If you haven't seen any of those videos, go check them out. But yeah, just a lot of tuning, a lot of frustrating work. But in fact, the board behind me is a breakdown of all things I had to do to the Weber, and there's a whole video coming out about this later on. So quite a lot of work. I've also got the Cooper S engine rebuild happening.
For anybody watching, if you haven't watched Darren's series on tuning Weber, you absolutely need to watch that, because this is an example of what happens when somebody wants a carburetor tuned, and actually it can't be tuned because the installation is wrong. So the whole thing has to be re-engineered before it can actually be made to work properly.
Yeah. This board is about a month of work behind me to get that truck to run right.
So if any of you haven't seen that, please go over and watch that video, because that's very educational. As Darren says, there's going to be another video, part 4, coming out, which is basically listing all the work that needs to be done. And if you look behind Darren's head now, that's the board with all the things that need to be done to actually do just a basic calibration and get that carburetor working. All right.
Yeah, the tuning is up here. The last little bit of actual jet tuning work is way up here.
Yeah. So that's when a tune-up is a re-engineering job.
But it was worth it in the end.
Yeah.
Drove really well. And so other things going on. Well, clearly everyone's starting to drive their cars, and hopefully you all remember to use stable in your fuels over the winter. If not, you'll be dealing with carburetor troubles this spring.
Yep.
And but I know that you've been busy doing a bunch of training.
Yes. So I've had a very busy month. So it started my tuning season, which started at the beginning of March. We're just about halfway through now, and we're been flat out already. And we've done. I've already done 2 training sessions. One with ADO restoration up in Halifax, And then I've just this minute today come back from Leicester, where I've done a chap called Sam from SR Auto Works. So he's now going to be the AC Dodd trained tuner in the Leicester
Yeah,
area.
we can certainly use more training tuners around here.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other thing is, I haven't got any more trainees now that have booked. So any more now, because I'm now full for the rest of the year, is going to be the winter now. Before I.
Yeah, speaking of our tuner network, TK's just finished a 2-week-long tuning trip where he traveled around all of New Zealand tuning cars.
Yeah. So
we're
he's
looking forward to
gone
seeing his
to the
footage.
North Island. He's gone everywhere, all over the place in 2 weeks, and I think he tuned. I think it was 21 cars.
Yeah, some intense number.
Yeah.
But it was several thousand kilometers of driving for him as well, so it was a long trip.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing his footage to come out soon on that trip.
Yeah. He's got lots of footage, banks and videos, so they should be very interesting, including lots of scenery.
Well, when you're in some place as nice as New Zealand, you might as well have some scenery shots.
Absolutely. So we haven't got any questions tonight.
We got one from Stefan.
Oh yeah, okay. Sorry, beg your pardon. Yeah. Yeah, would it be possible to give that ball a weld with my MIG welder? Yes, but bearing in mind it's a ball bearing which is hardened steel, high carbon, so it may crack. So you need to just try it and see what happens, because the ball, the weld might crack after you do it. So that's why I did. That's why I've raised it. You can also Keith Carver just removes the whole lot and puts a plug in. So there's a couple of ways of doing it.
Do you want to explain why you have to do that?
Yes, I mean, this is an interesting. So I can't understand why I have to explain it. To me, it's so straightforward, right? If people this might be wrong, but if people ask me why do you do this modification, that clearly demonstrates they have no idea how that works, not one iota. What that is a bypass valve. And if the filter gets blocked, it opens and allows oil to go past the filter unfiltered and straight into the engine. So the modification is to prevent that happening, to force the oil to go through the filter to make sure it's always filtered. Now, that's great until the filter actually blocks, and then you don't get any oil to your engine and you destroy your crankshaft bearings. Well, the point is, in order to stop that, you just need to make sure you change your oil and filter regularly. Okay, so I've tested this modification on road cars at 3,000 mile intervals and have no issues. Okay, so it's not something that I've ever seen. And when I say I've had that, I've run cars over, certainly I've tested it for over 30,000 miles. And change the filter every 3,000. So what's that? 10 filter changes? Never a problem. Always good oil pressure. And you have to remember that your oil pressure gauge comes out of the main gallery, so you can tell if it's getting starved of oil, right? Because it will drop. So the A series will let you know if there's an issue, and you'll be changing the filter way before there's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really a feature from days of the past when we were using those paper filters, and they just kept making the filter hoses out with that bypass. They really should have just blocked it.
So hopefully that helps you understand, Stefan Mini Cooper there, why we do that modification. But that is recommended on all A series engines. But again, it's not a modification that is beneficial if you're not somebody who services regularly. You've got to make sure you absolutely service regularly. When I was running that car that had it on, I used to buy my oil filters 10 at a time and have them on the shelf.
Yeah.
Buy a trade pack and just swap
Cheap.
them. No, cheap, no problem. Yeah.
Yeah, oil and filter changes are so cheap compared to the cost of building an engine. It's like, why would you even question doing a filter change?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So Rich Holder's come up and said, hi guys, advice on restoring SU bodies. Getting that shiny refurbished finish on the body, polishing dash pots and fuel bowls. I'll let Darren answer that because Darren knows I don't tell everybody how I do mine. So I'm going to stay quiet on mine.
Yeah, so there's different kinds of finishes that you can achieve with the carburetors. As I did in that video, I used my vapor cabinet, my vapor blasting cabinet, which is a media in water being propelled by compressed air to achieve a
Just going
certain
to reduce
finish.
that noise, sorry.
So
There we go.
that will give you a slight polished texture look. Same thing with just regular dry glass bead blasting. So there's a number of dry blasting techniques you can use to get a finish. There's also mechanical abrasion, so like actual wire wheels and things you can improve the finish. But if you want that brand new look, you're probably going to go through a tumbling process with rouge and various other medias to really get that crisp, fresh look about it. But a lot can be done just mechanically, so it just takes a lot of effort. One of the things that I've learned by using my vapor cabinet is that I spend a lot of time cleaning the parts in a ultrasonic tank. First I'll clean them on a wire wheel, then I'll ultrasonic clean them, then I'll go to the cabinet, and then I'll put it back in the ultrasonic tank to get rid of any media that might be stuck on the surface. So there's a lot of multiple stages before and after the blasting or whatever process to ensure that the parts are truly clean, because media can stick to places you don't expect, and they might interfere with the operation of the carburetor later on. So it's more
Yeah.
important to have it truly working and operational and clean than it is to have it shiny. But I know people want shiny. And honestly, a brand new SU carburetor isn't that much more expensive from SU, and you get everything brand new, all the brand new screws and springs. Everything's been plated nice, so it's a fine battle between all that work versus a new component. Now, the new cars may not be set up properly, so you might spend time fixing a new car, but at least all the components are fresh. Another alternative is to buy new hardware from SU because you can get screws and springs and all the levers, so you can bypass the plating steps and just buy new ones.
Yeah, sundries kit.
Yeah, sundries.
I think it's something like, I don't know, 20 quid, 25 quid for a sundries kit, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, and having freshly plated springs is nice, just because they last longer before they start rusting, and also
Yep.
they're fresh springs. So
Yep, not fatigued. I understand.
yeah,
Yeah,
but like for
because
instance,
it is worth letting people know that my carburetors aren't perfect, because I know Darren's had a spring failure on one of my carbs, and that's
yeah,
because I reuse the old components. Because if they're serviceable at the time of refitting, then they go again. They only get on a refurb. They only get replaced if they're not functional, or there's insufficient poundage, for example. But I know Darren certainly had one of mine break due to fatigue, basically.
yeah, and I had them on extra on hand, so I was able to fix it. I still need to get a replacement. But this carburetor I have here is an HS2 that I've been working on, and it's a good example of the media impregnation. So this went through a blasting process, not by me, but it's just a carburetor I inherited, and it just like it's stuck. There's grit in here that there it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sticky and gritty, and no one ever did a good job cleaning it. So I'm having to fix this one.
So on my last video, where it's the one that's entitled "All the Glitters," that carburetor, when I took the float lid off, had grit around the rubber seal. So somebody had put that together with grit still in it.
Wow, that's frustrating.
Yeah,
And
but that's what people do.
and to me, the ultrasonic cleaning tank is cheap. I mean, as long as you're careful with a brush, you can do a great job of cleaning them. But I find that the ultrasonic tanks do a much more thorough job, and they're also heated on top of that. So the very last wash is usually just basic dish soap and water, and give
Yeah,
them one final rinse before I start assembling, and they're great.
yeah,
And again, those tanks are cheap.
yeah. So the process I use is a mechanical process, so it's not a tumbling tank or any of that business. But as I said before, we keep that one under wraps.
Yeah. But yeah, there's many ways of doing it.
Yeah.
Like for instance, John Guess at Guessworks, he's got a giant cement mixer where he puts all of his aluminum, diff housings in with media, and they just get, tumbled around for a while, and they look great.
Yeah.
And it's just a tumbling mechanical process that does those.
Yeah. So when I was doing my rockers, I'll clean them with I'll put them in a tumbler and I'll let them tumble for about 20 minutes in kerosene. And the media that I used in there was small self-tapping stainless steel screws.
Yeah, something small, pointy, gets all the nooks and crannies.
And hard, right? So it would scuff the surface, so you get a nice sort of scouring action on the surface, and it would take all the rubbish on, detritus off, and all. It worked very well. For 20 minutes, they come out really good.
Yeah, but whatever you use, it still needs some sort of final finishing work.
Yeah. Okay, so Neil Bedford's there. Hi both. I'm building a 1340 Mini with twin 1.5-inch SUs and a facet fuel pump. What are your thoughts on a good fuel pressure? Okay, so what are those SUs? Are they HS4s or are they HIF4s or HIF38s? So if you can get back to us, Neil, to understand what type of carbs they are, we can help you out. Matthew Steele's in. Good evening, gentlemen. Evening, Matthew.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Okay, Massimiliano. Good evening, Adrian and Darren. Good evening. Rick Jessup. Would you run a resistor plug and what gap on a non-dizzy wasted spark setup? Yes. If you've got a 0.4 ohm core, you can run 40 or 45 without gap, no problem.
Yeah, and the resistor plugs aren't that critical anymore.
No.
Because you have so much more power.
Yeah. So the resistors needed for suppression purposes, basically. So yes, on that sort of power, you will need a resistor plug. So yeah, there's no problem with that. But if you're running a wasted spark system and a coil pack, for Christ's sake, fit the most power coil pack that you can get your hands on. Really whack that spark energy in there, and then you can have a situation where you can run, nice and sensibly, maybe 1.2 lambda at cruise, so you can make that engine last a real long time and run properly and cleanly.
Yeah, that's what an MPI does. It's about 1.2 on cruise, and its choke start is lambda 1.
Yeah.
So very efficient. Very efficient.
And that's because it's got lightning bolts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Neil Bedford's come back with HS4. Well, if you've got HS4, the maximum fuel pressure you can run is 1.5. So I would actually run it about 1.3. So you only need 1.3 to those carbs, purely because they're twin carbs. So you've actually got twice the needle valve area. So you've got 270 thou jets feeding that engine. You're not going to have a problem. That should be enough fuel to feed 140 horsepower. And those carbs won't supply enough air for that, so you're absolutely fine with about 1.3 psi.
It's interesting. That was on one of my list of my notes to discuss here. Was as you get into the spring and people are running their cars, it's fuel pressure for the various setups, because when the pumps fail, you get a new pump. You don't know what the pump output's going to be, so you got to measure it and use a regulator to regulate it down. But it's fuel pressure, but it's also the needle and seat valves and the sizes.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's really important to measure the actual hole size on the seat or the valve.
Yeah.
Versus it's a 70 versus a 96, I think, something like that.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, it's common to find the 96 ones in a non-genuine SU rebuild kits, but it's always important to double check. You want to use the smaller valves for your application.
And when you've got twin SUs, you don't need the big needle valves.
Yeah, it's twice as much jet area.
Yeah. He's just come back. Fantastic. Thanks, lads. So we used the regulator to turn it down a bit. Great. Yep.
Yeah. Now the SU, the HIFs, they can go up to about 3 pounds, I believe, right?
Yeah. So if you're you can run 3.5, maybe 4, but you don't need that much pressure. So I only run 2.5 psi on an HIF. And if I can't get enough flow for a 70 thou seat, then I put a 96 in it. That's plenty.
Yeah. Yeah, if you need a 96 thou jet, that's a big engine.
Yeah. Have you got any experience using a SU carb with megajoule ECU? Yeah, that's generally all my experience. So I've mapped plenty of megajoule setups running SUs.
It seems to be a good DIY standalone ignition system.
Yeah.
But the key is to understand the limitations of the ignition system and then control your fueling. So if you're running a 0.4 coil, you find out what your upper limit is on your mixture, and it might be 1.2, it might be 1.15. You just got to experiment to figure out what that limit is, and then set your maps, and accordingly. But yeah, if you're gonna get more power, you're gonna be able to run it leaner at cruise.
Yeah.
Make the engine last longer.
So we've got 36 people in at the moment and only 16 likes. Give us a thumbs up, please. Thank you very much. That helps us all. Absolutely. Got to get the cuts in as well.
Yeah. I saw one of your stickers on TK's car down in New Zealand now.
Yeah, we're getting around the place.
Yeah, I'll have to get a batch of those next time.
Rich Holder, thanks, chaps. Is it possible to swap cam followers through tappet chest cover on an A+ 998? I believe it is. Any advice if so? As it get me away repair until next winter's rebuild? Yeah. Yes, so you can take the tappet chest covers off at any small bore engine, whether it's A series or A+, and lift the followers out and put new ones in, no problem at all. But you'll find it a lot easier to remove the exhaust and inlet manifold to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I often wondered about doing that, but then I often wondered about the cam, because the cam is going to be worn. So like, how well will the cam operate with the new set of lifters? Like, will it be able to rotate them properly? I don't know. Never tried it.
Yeah.
I know it's doable, but I've never tried it.
Ian Otley, hi Ian, nice to see you there. He says hi. Stefan Mini Cooper, 2 months ago I ordered the first time Stabile. I'm surprised how good the Mini starts after some rest. There you go. We don't just sit here going, you need Stabile because we want you to waste your money. We tell you to use Stabile because your life changes. That's why we tell you to use it. All right?
Yeah, and they don't pay us to say it. We just tell everyone to do it.
I have to pay for it. Yeah, I have to buy it. And people say to me, "Oh, it's all right for you. You're selling. You make loads of money." I make £3.50 on a bottle, and I might sell 20 bottles a year. Right? Do the math. I don't get rich.
Yeah, I just charge everyone the cost. And like the value of the product is more to prevent problems in the future.
Yeah.
With the tune I do.
The value of that product for me selling it is it makes my service even better.
Yeah, because it makes everything last longer.
Yeah, it makes the owner's experience even better after I visit it. That's the value of that product.
Yeah, I even use it in my normal daily drivers. I don't care. I just stick it in. That's a fuel injected engine. I don't want the fuel to turn. I don't want to damage any of the injectors or the pumps. I just stick it in. It's easy. And it's not that expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen people separate the ethanol out of the fuel, but that's like more work than I have time for.
Yeah. Okay, so Rich Holder, thanks AC. Manifold's already off, so plan to get some machine carver followers. Very sensible. Neil Bedford, so handy having removable tappet chest covers. Any thoughts why this was not done on 1275 engines? 1275 engine was a later one, saving money. So 1275 Cooper S block has that, but the last engine to be made was the 1275 A Plus. And if you put a tappet chest cover in, you've got to machine a rear face of the block, right, which you didn't have to before to give it a nice smooth surface. And you've got to make a cover to go over it and a bolt, and it just adds to the bill, right? If you don't need to do it, then don't do it. That's the whole point of mass production. If you can save a few pence on every one and you're making thousands, that's how you make a profit. So at the end of the day, if it's deemed, what's the benefit of having it on there? Well, back in the day, nobody went around changing followers, so it wasn't needed.
And if they did, it was either because of premature failure or the engine was at the end of its life anyway.
Yeah. In which case it was a rebuild.
But the key to the followers is you got to get that right radius profile.
Yeah. And that's where you go to Keith Carver. He's got a machine and he grinds them up with a proper radius on the end. So, yes, you did hear that right. A radius on the end. They might be called flat tappets. They're not flat. They have a radius. They have a crown on them of about 2/1000 of an inch. So don't quote me on that, but it's in that sort of range. So it's just like a crown on the end of the follower, and it means that the contact's off to one side and they rotate properly. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. The Cooper S engine that I'm taking apart to rebuild that had the bore wash, 7 of the 8 lifters had full rotation marks, and the 8th one was just like wiggling back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a common problem.
Yeah. Bill Beard, hi both. What spare plugs would you recommend on a 1380cc modified head and camshaft? Not sure the compression ratio. Well, I need to know how well that engine's breathing, so I need to know what the cam is, what rockers are on it, what carburetors on it, and then I can stop. And then what use do you put to it?
Yeah, how hard do you drive it?
Yeah, is it going around a racetrack and it's on a trailer, or is it driven down the shops? So I just need a bit more information there, Bill. Ian Otley, I'm rewiring my moke. Good, because there was what's the word? His wiring loom was not working as I would expect. So that's good that you're doing that. And he says it says there the new wiring loom isn't correct. Yeah, you'll just have to make it do. Unfortunately, Ian, but a man of your caliber, that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, and even if it's not correct, as long as like the majority of the connections are new, it's going to work better no matter what you have to do to make it work. Yeah, I've got another, early Mark 1 coming in for a harness rebuild, or I should say replacement, probably the next month or so. And I just hope that it's got all the right connections in that harness I ordered. Now, there's a few places to get harnesses. Auto Sparks, I think, is one commonly, referred to by many people over there. But yeah, unless you're the builder or you specify, you just don't know if you're going to get everything.
Yeah.
And I've had harnesses I've ordered that were supposed to work for cars with electric pumps, and they weren't pre-wired for the pump, so I had to run an extra harness, wire along the headliner along with the rest of the harness. It just happens.
Master Milano, I'm about to change pistons on my conrods for the first time. Press fit gudgeon pins. How hot? This is a very good question because people don't understand anything about heat treatment of steel. So if you end up making those conrods glow, you scrap them, okay? Or at least you soften the conrod to the point where it's not got any strength left or any ability to retain that gudgeon pin. So you see lots of YouTube videos with people heating conrods up and the ends glowing cherry red or orange. They've destroyed the rod. Okay, so heating a conrod, you only want to go up to deep straw to just the blue threshold, and that's it. Okay, any more than that, and what you're actually doing by heating the rod is tempering it. But the rods are tempered at a high temperature because they want them quite soft. Okay, but going past that temperature will soften them even further. Right. So the important thing to understand here is you must control that temperature. So you only want to. So when you do that, firstly you want to practice. So practice by doing it on an old rod, or if you've got one, and an old piston, so you can practice getting that on and off. If the pin goes in and gets stuck halfway, you're knackered. So you need a press to be able to get it off. So if you haven't got a press handy and the appropriate tools, do not try it yourself. So I have professional engine builders sending me pistons, right, to take them off and put them on, because I'm one of the only people that seems to be able to get these things off without damaging them. all right, because people haven't got the right kit. So literally in the UK, there's not many people that you can trust to take these on and off and not cause damage. So it's, you know, it's easy to do when you have the knack. If you haven't got the right tools and you aren't supporting the piston properly, you will break something. All right. And the other trick to doing this is you must measure the appropriate diameters. Okay. So the inside diameter of the small end and the outside diameter of the gudgeon pin. So the appropriate fit is there. So really on an A series, you want a minimum of, on a standard road engine, minimum 8/10. Okay. And that's only applicable really if that conrod hasn't lost any of its temper. Okay, so if it's been overheated in the past because it's had a set of rods on it done wrong, this, you know, 8/10 is a bit loose. All right, more like 1 thou is the minimum, and then up to 1.5. Now I've had certain Cooper S rods, for example, up to 2.5. Right now they are very difficult to get pins through, and you have to heat them up a bit more. But obviously, I'm not going to talk about that because I don't want you to ruin your conrods. All right. So if you've got any doubt, give it to somebody who knows what they're doing. Now, if you haven't got anybody that knows what they're doing, then I appreciate you're going to have to try and do it yourself. Don't overheat the conrod, but make sure that all of those pins and rods have got the appropriate interference fit, because there are many out there that are loose. And then what will happen is you'll fit the pin, you think it's okay, and then you put it in the car and a gudgeon pin comes out while you're driving and destroys the engine.
Yeah, and I think you know, Ross has a video of him doing it, but he uses a special, you know, marker on the rod to melt at the right temperature. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, so I'm a blacksmith in the way I do mine. So I clean the rod and shine it up so it will react with the oxygen in the atmosphere with the right temperature, so I can see the colours. So I do it by colours. But yeah, if you go past the you know, if you get it just blue, that's lovely. Any more than that, like light blue, you've gone too hot. All right. So, and if you're seeing any kind of glowing, you've destroyed it.
Yeah. Not worth messing about.
Okay. So, Steve Crook, I see you have done training at ADO. Are you still going doing the tuning weekend book for June? Yes, I am. So I'm going back up there to do that training, to do that tuning weekend for ADO. Okay. Hi. Do you find there's a difference in lambda reading between the back of the exhaust and closer to the manifold? Yes, a little bit. 0.03, something like that.
Yeah, it's not much.
It's not worth worrying about. It's more if you've got a leak on the system, because obviously oxygen goes down in the system and then it'll be more. If a good sealed system, it won't be a lot. Marshall Ply or P1Y. Hi guys, have you had any experience with CSI distributors? Are they worth the money? Yeah, I haven't got any problem with CSI distributors. As long as there's a curve that suits your application, then that's absolutely fine. The other thing I find with a lot of these aftermarket dizzes is they don't necessarily have enough module to fire a low ohm coil.
Yeah.
All right. So I was looking at one the other, which I've got on film, and it's a CSI based distributor. But I think it quoted the lowest ohm coil it would fire was 2.5 ohms, which is, I mean, I'd never fit that to any engine. Yeah. But you have to remember, some of these people are making them for classic engines of the 60s, right? And that's absolutely fine. But you know, I don't go about building engines or tuning engines when, you know, I wouldn't fit a 2.5 ohm coil, because what's the point? You know, you're deliberately hamstringing the ignition when you could have a 0.8 ohm coil, run a leaner mix, the engine lasts longer, and it's better for the environment.
Yeah.
Why would you run a 2.5 ohm coil?
Yeah. Yeah, just better ignition performance.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that every CSI is like that, but the one I saw had the instructions and it specifically said no lower than 2.5 ohms. All right. So I cannot say that about the rest of them because I don't know, but that was the one I saw.
Yeah, and because of that ignition power, there was a car I had out here that had to. It was like a late '80s car that had one of those fitted, and we have strict emissions tests above a certain year, and that ignition system just couldn't put out enough power to meet the emissions test. So I had to
Yeah.
upgrade to a power spark distributor just to
Yeah.
get the coil energy to run the lean mixture that it needed to pass the tests.
Yeah, but you fitted a power spark with a 0.8 ohm coil and it passed the test.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
but
the
I liked
point.
the curve. Yeah, the CSI had some good curves,
Yeah.
but just didn't have the coil energy behind it.
Yeah. So you have to remember, it's not that they're bad distributors, but they're designed and made for a certain application. Okay, and I'm not, you know, when I'm tuning engines, I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in is the best performance for that engine, right? I'm not interested in what year it was or any of that business. I want to get the absolute best burn out of that engine, and the only way to do that is lightning bolts.
Yeah, there's a reason all of our modern cars run, coil on plug.
Yeah, yeah. So to sum up, Marshall, there's nothing wrong with CSI distributors. If you've got a 1960s car and it doesn't need to pass any strict emissions, the selectable advanced curves are all good, and that, you know, it's a great bit of kit. But if you are interested in, you know, lean burn, getting a nice part throttle nice and clean, or you want maximum economy, then there are better options in terms of distributors that can run a higher power coil. That's basically what it comes down to. Okay, so Ian Otley, AC, every motor should have a bit of helicopter on it. I'm in contact with Autosparks, who have been extremely helpful, and I will donate the old wiring loom and a process sketch of the new one. Good man, Ian. Okay, Rich Holder, with a stage 1 heated inlet manifold, I retain block mounted heater valve, or does this lead to temperature creeping into the cabin matrix? My Mini came with a stage 1 and an inline valve, but I'd like to change it back. So generally speaking, you know, if it's the middle of summer, you might want to turn your heater off. And there's no harm really in the middle of summer, as if you probably turn the heat down on the manifold. All right. So because there's enough ambient heat there to do the job. But in the winter, or when it gets colder, you certainly want to have that heat in the cabin, and you want the heat going through the manifold. So factory cars would always run heat through the manifold, regardless of the year, because they're interested in roofless efficiency and putting the minimum amount of fuel through an engine they possibly can. That's why they run it.
Yeah, on the last production cars like the SPI, that had a heated manifold. That manifold is heated regardless of the position of the heater valve, because the hose had an extra fitting to allow the heat to circulate through the manifold, and there was a separate junction for the heater. So there was always a concern about making sure the manifold was up to the right temperature,
Yeah.
no matter what. But if you're running an inline valve through the heater, or through the manifold through the heater, you can turn it off in the summer and turn it on in the winter. It just gives you some control of that. But yeah, you need to have heat. That was half the problem with this Weber truck. It didn't have enough heat. It just caused all kinds of problems.
Yep. So somebody asked a question on there. They on your video, didn't they, Darren? About they couldn't understand. They couldn't get their head around. You can have 0.95 and a dark color plug. Well, the simple reason is because there is basically fuel puddling in the manifold because there isn't sufficient heat to vaporize it. So what happens is less fuel is put through the engine, so a leaner mix, so it reads leaner. And then all of a sudden, when you open the throttle, there's a great big slug that gets sucked in, and it goes rich. But you end up putting all that fuel through an engine that is basically waste, and all that fuel for an engine will cause ball wash and all the rest of it. So having the right heat in a manifold is absolutely imperative if you want a long-lived engine and one that has a stable air fuel ratio while it's driving.
Yeah, this thing was totally unstable. You would drive it for 15 minutes and they would stall at a stoplight or something. just because the manifold got so cold, the fuel would stick to it, and then the engine had no fuel to run on. And then you go to take off, and it'd get this huge slug of fuel, and sometimes it'd stall because it went too rich. It was just undrivable at slow speed. After adding a bunch of heat and doing a bunch of changes, it became drivable, but it was just the characteristic of not having any heat in the manifold.
Yeah.
With a Weber.
Okay, so Kathy's arm candy. Darren, a tempil stick. Yeah. So a tempil stick is basically it's like a metal encased chalk stick, and it's designed to basically melt and change colour at a certain temperature. So you can buy them in in certain temperature ranges, and it's like a chalk stick. You put a mark on it, and then it changes colour when you get that. So typically, if you're heating up a component, you might put 4 or 5 markers on at different heat ranges, and then you can see the temperature progressing on the actual component as it warms up. So that's what a tempil stick is. They're very good. I've used many of those in the past, but I don't use a tempil stick for doing these. I simply just look at the standard oxidizing colours that you get on the steel, and that's good enough. Okay. Massey Milano, thanks a lot, AC. I've got all the equipment. I don't trust others. That's why I want to start doing it myself. That's absolutely fine. I've seen Ross's video. He says around 250. It's a bit hotter than 250. Okay. But he might be saying that because he doesn't want people to overheat their rods, because he knows that that's important as well. Overheating a rod is no-no. So hence, if you've got an old rod, practice. Steve Crook, what's the best for high mileage engines? Connecting the carb for negative crankcase pressure, or connecting the catch tank to avoid oil fumes contaminating the air fuel mixture? Everyone goes on about contaminating fuel. If it's a road car, who the hell cares? It's not going to affect it enough to worry about. And if it does, it needs a rebuild. Simple.
Yeah. Yeah, run it to the carb, burn it.
Burn it. Yeah. There are so many benefits of having negative crankcase pressure, with a carb evacuated sump. Basically, you get a negative pressure in the sump. It causes all the seals, oil seals, to grip harder. That's a good thing because it keeps oil in. It keeps a negative pressure in the sump, so the dipstick stays in the hole. It also helps with the piston ring seal as well. So when you reduce the pressure in the sump, that'll actually increase the tension on the rings in the bores by a small amount as well. This all helps, right? If you start going on about like contaminating the injector, right? Is this a 13-to-1 compression race engine? If the answer is no, forget about this conversation and just connect it to the carb and get on with your life. Simple. Yep. That's it. There's just not, there are specific scenarios where you would want a race engine, okay, and you don't want that in there because you're worried about that 13-to-1 compression engine detonating. And therefore, you would have other alternatives. So I would never, ever have a race engine running positive pressure. I would always want negative pressure. So I'll probably use a vacuum sump system on the exhaust, or a vacuum pump driven by the engine to suck out that air. I would never, ever have open breathers. That's just the worst combination.
Also, the negative pressure helps keep the oil cleaner. It helps the VOCs escape because it's under negative pressure. So instead of absorbing into the oil, it gets retained as a vapor and it gets sucked back into the engine to be burned. So it keeps the oil fresher for a longer period of time.
Yeah, and that might also be to do with the ring sealing better as well. So there's less contamination. Bill, okay, so Bill Beard, on a freshly rebuilt engine, how quickly can you bore wash the engine if the carb is not jetted correct? Less than
minutes.
a minute. Less than a minute.
Yeah, minutes, literally minutes.
Yeah, so less. Well, I would go even worse than that, Darren. Less than 1 minute.
Wow. Yeah, it's ridiculous how fast it can happen.
So, the very first time you start that engine, where's your wideband gauge? If you're starting an engine without a wideband gauge, you've got a problem, yeah? Because you've got no way of monitoring what the fueling's doing. start the engine, get it lean straight away. And when I mean lean, lambda 1 or a little bit higher, like 105, something like that. That's all you want, right? It's not going to hurt the engine.
Yeah, and you're not trying to do an emissions test as soon as you start the engine. So run it lean, run it clean, get it broken in, and then worry about making the power you want out of it.
Yeah.
When I rebuilt that MPI engine last year, the last thing I did before I started taking parts off that car was check the mixture coming out of the tailpipe to make sure it was running as it should be before I took apart the engine. So that when I started to back up, I knew it was working properly. And I still had my tuning kit hooked up to it while I was also monitoring the computer's signals at the same time to make sure that it didn't go rich at any point in time during the cam break-in. Yeah.
Just to let everybody to be clear on that, what Darren was saying is he actually monitored the fueling before he took the old engine out to make sure that the ECU and system wasn't washing or running too rich on the old engine, so that when he put the same system back in on the new engine, he knew it wouldn't kill it. All right, because if the system's running wrong on the old engine, it will destroy the new one very quickly. Now, the other thing you want to do on a brand new engine is run braking oil, right? Makes a huge difference now. So run the proper braking oil, and you won't have an issue. I broke in my, because I told Darren this, my EcoBoost engine that I replaced over a year ago now in my Focus. Okay, I broke it in with the driven. I think it was 530 driven braking oil, and I drove the wheels off that. It did 26 miles to the gallon during braking, and I was doing 2.5 to 4,000 RPM full boost, 1.4 bar pulls on that engine during the first 150 miles. All right, and I had to go and find a road that I could do that on because a 1.5 EcoBoost hauls ass when you put your foot down. Okay. So, it was difficult to run it in. However, now that I've done the braking and I changed the oil after 350 miles, that engine uses not one drop of oil. All right. It is sealed up tight. That's not a genuine Ford engine. That's an aftermarket Asian knockoff. All right. And it runs sweet. It's got nearly 25,000, in fact, 24,000 miles it passed today while I was out on the road. And I checked the oil and it's not using none. All right. And the old engine, when I got it with 41,000 miles on it, was already using oil. All right. So that was the original Ford one, because for whatever reason, the first running on that engine probably wasn't perfect. Whereas I've done the running on this one controlled by myself. And, when I told the garage what I was going to do, they looked at me in horror. And anyway, when I go back now, I said, uses no oil. They're like, wow. And I went, that's because that's a modern running. Okay. You have to have the right oil and you don't thrash it. It never went over 4,000 revs during running, but it did have high boost to blow those piston rings into the bores. So when you're doing your A series, it's not about revs, it's about cylinder pressure. Okay. And you need the right oil, you need the right fueling. Okay. And you need load.
Yep. Yeah, I have a 80-mile loop right next to my house that goes up into the mountains, and it just starts basically going uphill, and it's a 3,000-foot elevation climb.
Have you done you've done videos on braking in, have you?
I have footage. I haven't finished, compiling it. Okay. I have footage. It's one of those.
Darren's actually got an example where he's done 2 engines and broken in 2 engines using that method, and he actually goes and drives them up hills, big ones, right, to get the load on them. And you put weight in them as well, don't you?
Yeah. Well, the first car, I didn't do it just because it was a fairly stiff engine. It was a factory rover block that I had to break in over 500 miles. And it took about the 500-mile distance before I finally felt normal.
Yeah.
The second one, I probably could have just handed the keys to the owner. It was a much nicer, much smoother running engine, but I still went through the break-in process. Now, again, I never went over 4,000 RPMs, just going up the hills in the gears. I wasn't, having the engine revving high. It was basically making the engine work hard every single hill. And at one point in this loop, there's a 12% grade at the peak. It's like 12% grade at around 8,000 feet. And you're in second gear, pushing the engine hard just to get up the hill. So it's not an easy road to drive. It's fun, it's windy, but the point of it is it's a load and it's a constant, incline, no matter what you're doing.
Now,
There's no creeping.
the other thing that Darren has to compete with that we don't at sea level is Darren's got 20% less torque. Okay, so breaking in an engine for him is even harder than it is for anybody else at sea level because he's got less cylinder pressure to do it with.
Yeah, less overall performance. But again, it's all about maintaining the engine's load, not going fast, not revving hard.
Yeah.
But it can be done. I mean, it can be done on like a flat surface. You just have to understand, what can I do to add to the car to make it heavier? You need people, you need, weights, whatever. You add stuff to the car to make the engine work harder during that braking phase, and then you switch to your normal oil once you're done.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we've bashed everybody enough about breaking in.
Yeah, but yeah, it doesn't take much time to ruin an engine.
No.
The Cooper S I'm rebuilding now is 255 miles.
Yeah, that was destroyed. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a mirror finish on those cylinder boards. You could read the text on a screwdriver.
Yeah.
Inside when you put it was crazy.
Okay, so Marshall P1Y, thanks guys. The CSR unit was looking at can only work with the 3 ohm coil, so I will forget that. If I was to use a power spark distributor, what curve would suit a 1071 with an Evo? Well, I'd just go straight for my fast road curve. So you want something with about 10 or 12 degrees static. You probably want, depending on the compression. So I don't know what you're building this engine. Okay, so I don't know what head's on it. I don't know what compression you got there, but my go-to curve will be something like 10 degrees static, 20 degrees at 2000 revs, and then sort of all in at sort of 28 degrees. Okay, at about 4000. All right, that's a good start. Yes, you could probably get it better than that, but I don't know enough about your engine, and I'd need to put it on a dyno and measure it and all the rest of it. But that is a very good starting curve.
Yeah,
and
very good.
You want to use vacuum. All right. So if it's a road car, vacuum.
Yeah, if you like exhaust valves and you like them sealing, you need vacuum advance.
And you don't want to crack your cylinder head. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you had some fun with vacuum units this weekend.
Sorry?
You had some fun with bad vacuum units this weekend during your training.
Oh, yes. I did the training with Sam at SR Auto Works. All 4 cars we had vacuum units that weren't working for various reasons. Some were just the vacuum units, but 2 of the cars there, people had put the ignition together with screws that were too long. We're just jamming the base plate up, and that caused the vacuum unit to fail as well. So, vacuum units are just something that, it should be made legal that you have to have it. If it's a road car, it has to have one. But of course, I'm not in charge of that. So,
yeah, well, the benefits are great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Almighty, what's your thoughts on using a thermostat rated to open at a hotter temperature? Does it affect the engine burn in any way, running engine slightly hotter? Slightly hotter than what? So, if you've got a road car running at 88 degrees, right?
Yep.
If you're running 92 on an A series, you might find that that could be difficult. So later cars do run a little bit hotter, but on an A series, 88 is pretty good for a road car. All right. 82 is a little bit cold, I find. And the reason why people call it down is because they think it won't overheat. Well, if you think about it, it does give you a little bit more available headroom. However, if it's not cooling in the first place, it's going to overheat anyway. So if your cooling system's working properly, it will run perfectly fine at 88, and your engine will run better. It will vaporize the fuel properly, better in the manifold. So everything will just work better at 88.
Yeah, my 71, my 998, I run that on an 88. It's fine, and I've driven that through 100-degree temperature across the plains, like at 70 miles an hour. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's got a good cooling system, but
yeah.
I mean, also when you're running the right temperature, or I should say a higher temperature, and you optimize the fueling, you optimize the performance of the engine, so you actually use less overall engine power to go the same speed.
Yep.
But if you go down on a temperature and you run colder, your efficiency drops off a little bit. So there is a give and take scenario on that. But yeah, if you're going to change the temperature, try and optimize it for that temperature.
So I'll need to turn my fan on again because my phone's getting a bit warm, so I've got to turn it on. Excuse me a second.
But yeah, that was one of the things I did this truck. I switched from an 82 to an 88, bump up the temperature. And between the changes in the manifold, if you watch the video, you'll see what I'm talking about. The changes in the manifold and the changes to the thermostat and the cooling system, I went from the cruising at like 9.5, 9.6 down to 8.3. So I had to take, downsize all the jets because I just had way too much fuel. Because the engine was burning so much more efficiently. So I was able to take fuel out of the system, even though I was going the same speed. It was becoming more efficient to drive.
Yeah, it's surprising. Like if you watch the last part of that video, how many times you took fuel out of it after you got it working.
It was when I first started working on the truck was very lean and it was undrivable. So I started, loosening up the fueling, but then I improved it, through this process, and I started going back down with the fueling because I didn't need it anymore.
Yeah. So I noticed we've got 53 people in. That's excellent. Thank you very much. If we can have some more lights, that will be fantastic. Thank you very much. Apologies for the background noise, but I'm needing a fan running to keep my phone cool, especially in a minute because I'm going to put it on charge so it'll get even warmer then. It's because the phone is now getting older, and the battery runs a bit warmer now because it's got a bit higher resistance in it. So I can't do much about that. But anyway.
We need more thumbs up so AC can get a new phone.
Yeah. More thumbs up. That was nice. Thank you. Vicky Will. Don't have much cold weather where I stay, but one cold morning I had to go out in my Mini about 30 minutes drive, and the car refused to accelerate. I assumed the oil was too thick for the dashpot to move 2050. Well, it could be all sorts of things. All right, but if you've got 2050, yes, in cold weather it will be stiffer. But if you've got a means of measuring what's going on, like using a wideband, you would understand the effects of what's going on in the engine. Okay.
Yeah, I think the wideband is almost as critical as an oil pressure gauge.
Yeah. Yeah, he says there, assume oil was too thick for the cold, refused to go over 3,000 RPM. There could be many reasons. Could even be carb icing. I don't know the temperature he was running at, but the point is, if you had a wideband gauge in there, you would understand what was going on. Back to the noise. Could I use a water brake dyno for breaking it in? Yeah. Yes, you can, but you need to control. You need to be able to hold the revs. So dynos are excellent for breaking engines in, and that's how professionals do it. They put it on a dyno, and they run a braking cycle for the piston rings. That's how all the professionals do their engine braking. So you don't have a problem because they can put it on the dyno, they can hold the load, they can monitor the fueling, and get everything's under control. So dyno braking is the way to do it. Just costs money.
Yeah, and you can work on the fueling and the ignition as well while you're doing that. But yeah, breaking in is the way to do it. If you ever get a chance to go watch a break-in video of a commercial truck being broken in with diesels in Toledo, it's very, very high load for extended periods of time.
Okay, so you like this one, Darren?
I just read it. Yeah.
Experience when rebushing SUs, 4s and 2s. I have the correct drills and reamers. I always like it when people say, "I have the correct drills and reamers." I bet you don't. And I get just under 3,000. So so the clearance I have is half that. Okay, you want 1.5 is acceptable clearance. Okay, so you won't get that by using off the shelf. So I've stopped using the bushes you can buy, and I make my own, and they're selectively assembled to get the right fit. It's the only way I can get the fits where I want them. I also use custom reamers. All right, so nothing you can buy off the shelf works. So I have to have custom made stuff, and it costs a fortune. But that's how you get this.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I buy 30 or 50 of these bushes at a time just to find the ones that are the tightest for my application.
Yeah. And you throw
I think
away
this
the
would make
ones that are really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I've got bags of these that are great in different sizes.
I get people saying to me, "Why do your rebuilds cost 450 quid?"
Yeah.
One
3
of the
bags of
reasons
these.
is because the bushes are handmade for each carb. You know, if you want them tight, that's what it costs.
Yeah. And good tight bushes give you the best cooling conditions because they're not leaking a bunch of air.
Okay, so hopefully that helps you understand the bush issue. So 3 thou is too big, 1.5 thou is much better. Goma 8759, does the unheated twin HS2 manifold have the same problem with inconsistent fueling? Yep.
Oh yeah, the twin. Yeah.
Yeah. So heat on the twin works as well.
Yep. So I have to point out that the water heating, it's not just for cold, it also tempers some of the heat in the summer against the exhaust heat because it's managing a constant temperature.
What is stabilization. If you put the water through the manifold, it helps maintain the temperature at a point where it's predictable what happens with the fuel mix. That's what it's for.
Yeah, it's very good at that job because it's water.
Yeah. Back to noise. Would steady state loading like this be okay, or would transient loads be good too? So what you do typically, if you're talking about breaking in rings, it's like 20 seconds load off, let the engine rest, then 20 seconds load off. Okay, so if you're doing it like that, I would say sort of 2750 RPM, full cylinder pressure, yeah, and then take it off, and then let it rev for half a minute or so, 30 seconds, and then and then go back on load. And you do that a few times, and then you're done. You can actually measure it. So if you measure your blow-by, so you've got a blow-by meter on the sump, you can actually measure the blow-by gases reducing. And when they get down to the minimum and stay there, breaking's complete.
I find it just more fun to drive this mountainous, hilly road.
Yeah.
But if you got a dyno, go ahead and use it.
Yeah. Steve Bunce, twin HS2s on a 1275 MG midget. Best setup to read AF, 1 or 2 wideband sensors. So,
well, I'd have 2.
What's your budget?
But if you're gonna fit them, they need to be fit in the correct location, and that is usually about 2 feet from the head, based on the sensor. So if you're not running 2 different exhaust pipes for the front versus the back at 2 feet from the head, then it's hard to run 2 sensors. You have to run 1 if they all collect by that point. Now, you could probably run 2 sensors closer to the head, but the risk is that they're going to overheat. So I would only do that just for the tuning and then take them out. But yeah, if you can do 2 sensors, that'd be great.
So, to sum up, Steve, you can do it with 1, but if you want the ultimate, 2 is better. Okay? And my suggestion is if you fit 2, just have them in there for the purposes of tuning. Once the tuning's done, take them out. All right? And then you can put them back in later if you want to do a check, or servicing.
Yeah, you'll find them that they're not identical. So you might need one carburetor might need slightly more polishing on the needle than the other to correct it. They're unique. I mean, they're basically 1 carburetor for 2 cylinders, so they're going to have some unique characteristics, and that's why you want to be able to monitor both halves of the engine.
Demiquad, yeah, guys, stop fighting it, wasting money, stabbing in the dark. Just get a wideband, really easy to fit. Well, he's right. Stop trying to put off spending 250 quid on a wideband. Just do it. It's a necessary evil, and then it allows you to get your fueling absolutely under control and perfectly set.
Yeah, I just finished doing a remote tune with a guy in Scotland with a very nice red Classic Mini pickup, and he had just built his engine and had it tuned, and he could see that the tune was way off because he had the wideband fitted, so he stopped driving it until he could correct the fueling situation because he was worried about damaging his fresh engine. And he was right, because if he had driven it any further, he would have damaged that engine with port wash problems.
Vicky Whittle just come back. It was before my wideband was installed, so this is the question about the 2050 oil. Was it too thick? Later that afternoon, once it warmed up outside, she drove normal. Yeah, so maybe if you had water heated on the manifold, that might stabilise that and make that work better, in all temperatures. So water heating the manifold is a good thing if you want, things to be stable and predictable. Will Hamden, okay, thanks. I need a big bag of bushes, clearly.
Well, even if you have a giant bag of bushes, you may not get ones that are tight enough because they're all being manufactured from, I think, the same manufacturer. So they have a tolerance range, and they may not go down tight enough to give you what you want. So that's why AC has his own custom-made ones.
So there's been a message that's been withheld, but there's nothing wrong with the message. It's from Goma. It says, who makes a heated twin HS2 manifold? No one.
I've never seen one.
No. You have to make your own by adding heat to an existing one.
Yeah. Yeah, if I ever have a twin carb setup, I'll figure out how to do it. It won't take that much work. You just need to have a couple points of contact around each chamber and well done.
Yeah, Vicky Whittle. What's the optimal spot for a wideband sensor? I usually, at the bottom of the manifold where all the pipes join in is where I normally go for a single installation. And obviously above centre line so that you don't get any water in the sensor. Somebody else has got one in the end of the pipe under the boot. The problem with that is it won't get hot enough to clean. And you have a problem with them self-cleaning anyway because of the fueling in a carburetor car isn't as clean as the fuel injection, so they get a bit more clogged up.
Yeah, and if you read the instructions on those wideband kits, they tell you to take them out every 3,000 miles and check them.
Yeah,
and that's what I find with my own personal setup. I got to take it out last week, clean it off, and then refit it, and that's fine getting under 3,000 miles.
Yeah. So RC minis, I agree with fitting a wideband. Best investment you can make on any mini. Guessing is never a good idea.
Yeah.
So all the people that fitted one will tell you, it's stupid not to have one. It's just all the people that haven't fitted one don't want to spend money on it.
Right. It's hard. I've managed to find a sale last year. I think I got a Innovate kit for about 140. Full kit, with the sensor. The most expensive part is the sensor, the Bosch sensor.
Yeah.
And you don't need the fastest version that they sell. You just need the standard version.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a few of them lined up on the shelves here just because I use that sensor for the tuning work, so I have to have spare sensors in case I have a sensor failure. But this last kit I got on sale from my club in the state. So they do go on sale. I would not buy a cheap wideband kit. I know there are some out there that are less than $100. I would not trust them, though. The Bosch sensors proved to be some of the most robust and accurate sensors I've used.
Yeah.
But, I could be wrong.
Yeah, I destroyed 2 Bosch ones 2 weeks ago in one weekend.
Yeah. Well, there were circumstances surrounding those failures, but they're not infallible. You need to run the sensor and the gauge at the same time. If you run the car with the sensor not turned on, or with the gauge not turned on, you can damage the sensor. So you have to have the sensor running. You have to have the sensor in the engine, with the engine running, and you have the gauge running at the same time. But only when the engine's running.
So back to the noughties. Have you heard of any modifications to a mini heater to make it less shy?
Yeah, 88 Celsius thermostat and a flush.
And put a new element in it makes a huge difference. If it's heat,
Yeah.
problem, putting a new element inside it makes it a lot better. And the other thing that makes those mini heaters a lot better is to replace all the foam inside to make it sealed, so you don't waste any of the blower energy, and it blows a lot more air if you do that. So stripping the thing down and replacing the foam in it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I use my car year round, and the heater's fantastic in it because I did a new core and I did exactly what AC said about the foam and around an 88 Celsius thermostat, and it's great. I also have heated seats for just the initial time period between when it's cold and when it's actually up to a temperature to get the heat from the heater. But again, I live in a place where there's snow and ice, so really important to me.
What wideband gauge would you recommend, Darren?
The Innovate, and I've also seen good results with the AEM as well.
Yeah. So I would use any of the gauges that use a genuine sensor.
Yeah. I like RCM's advice, drive it harder.
Is it just me, or is there intermittent audio snag with Darren's audio? There may be, because it may be me, because I've got a fan running. So you might find that when I speak, there's a lot of background noise. On the other hand, we had a problem at the beginning of this feed where Darren was cutting out and freezing a lot. And he seems to be, it's a lot better now. So let's just see how it works out. So I apologise if it's not perfect for everybody, but this is the best we can do. Darren Robert Shaw, back to the noise. 2-speed heater conversion.
Yeah, works great.
Oh, there's one for you there, Vicky Whittle. Darren, you like that one? Is it normal for HS4 non-wax statics needed to get slightly richer when the engine is at operating temperature?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole wax stat system is designed to adjust for various operating temperatures, mostly based on the temperature of the fuel, but also the surrounding environment around it.
Yeah.
And it moves the jet up and down slightly to try and maintain a more stable mixture. But if you're running a fixed jet and it's hot out, it can't adjust based on the temperature. And with hotter air means you have a richer mixture because you have higher efficiency of the engine. It causes the mixture to read richer because it is literally richer.
So if you put a water heated inlet on it, you would stabilise the temperature. And then if you tuned it with that water heated inlet at the right temperature, you would find, I would wager, that your changing mixture would reduce.
There have been days driving around in like the shoulder seasons where in the morning it's, just above freezing, in the afternoon I'm in shorts, and I've had to adjust my mixture by a flat or flat and a half from the morning versus the afternoon on my fixed jet car just to maintain the same running conditions.
Yeah.
They can require a lot of adjustment.
Yeah. And this is what you find out when you run a wideband gauge.
Yeah, so I highly recommend running the wax stat. And a heated manifold.
Will Hamlin. So would you plumb in a twin wideband on the left and right hand branches of the temporarily with the twins? Yes.
Yeah. Now, if you're going to do it before the Y, the sensor kit will come with a threaded adapter that's fairly long. I'd say close to 3/4 of an inch long, and it's intended to allow just the very tip of the sensor to be projected into the exhaust gas. I would use those fittings to do that installation because you're minimizing the amount of exhaust gas that sensor is exposed to. You're minimizing the amount of heat that the thing is going to be absorbing.
It's all right, phone's called down. Okay, so Demiquad, you guys often pull treble A needles out of 9/8 for being way too rich. What kind of mods are that? No.
None. You
yeah.
can't make it.
So okay.
I know. It's a 1275 conversion. That's
okay. So seriously though, there are the odd 998 that will use the treble A needle, all right? But it's not any given spec. So I've had to have 998s. I've had stage 1 998s that are standard engines that need a treble A, right? Very rare. So don't think that it's a certain set of mods that will make it. Doesn't work that way, all right? There's too many tolerances, and this is the understanding of how the SU works. This is how poor it is when people think you can just put a certain set of modifications and it will work with a certain needle. It doesn't work that way, all right? So the thinking you've got there is demi-quad is not the right way, right? It doesn't work that way. So basically speaking, in most applications, a treble A is not suitable, okay? There are the odd occasions where it is suitable, but it's not related to specification. It's related to tolerances, how the engine runs, what altitude you're at, everything. All right. Vicky Whittle, a fresh start on the day, car struggled to start and even idle without choke. Wideband says too lean until it warms up a little, and then she idles somewhat. Yeah, you need more heat in your manifold. That's what that's telling you.
Yeah, because you have to run more choke to compensate.
Yeah, it's basically it's too lean because it's not vaporizing the fuel.
Yeah, the fuel droplets are just sticking to the manifold and staying in droplet form, and it's harder for the engine to process just droplet fuel than it is a vapor mixture.
Ian Otley, you both recommend Bosch Wideband, but there are many variants. Can you provide some part numbers? I can. I'm going to just disappear off camera. I'm going to get the spare one I have.
Yeah, I think it's a 4.9, the Bosch 4.9. Since I don't know the exact part number, we'll find out what AC has. But they have a newer version, which is a faster response. It's not necessary because the 4.9, the original 4.9 is just fast enough.
So, yes, the number's backwards, but you'll have to work on that. All right. That's what I use. So they cost. I bought these. I bought two of them 2 weeks ago, and they were £90 each. Okay, and up until 2 weeks ago, I had one of these last 3.5 years and earned me £160,000. All right, so these are very resilient if treated properly. If you misuse them, like I was doing some training and I went through 2 in 2 days. Okay, because the person being trained just wasn't necessarily controlling the switching on and off properly. All right, that's what I believe. I'm not sure. I could have been a faulty one, but you know, I have to wear that cost when I'm training. All right, so these are very reliable when they're looked after. But when they're not, they're quite fragile. And if you take them outside of that operating window, they don't like it and they don't last.
Yeah. Yeah, I've basically had one fail on my red car because I don't always turn on the gauge when I'm driving, and that basically killed the sensor.
Yeah.
So they work as a pair. They have to work at the same time.
Yeah. John Edge, hi guys. What's the optimum tappet gaps for a 1098A series? Standard engine and cam, HS4 and new fast road high power AC Dizzy. Well, fair. Factory standard.
Measure it very carefully. 12 thou.
Yeah, 12 thou. Yeah, I mean, if you put it on a dyno and you experimented with different gaps, you might find it might suit your application to have a slightly different gap. But none of us can tell you what that is until you put it on a dyno and spend, I don't know what the current rate is. It's got to be £100 an hour, right? £100 an hour on a dyno, and then you can work out exactly what the exact gap combination is for your particular engine. But if you're just like the rest of us, 12 thou.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you were running like a 1.5 rocker, you maybe need a slight adjustment to that. But
yeah, 15.
Yeah.
John Edge, cheers. Yeah. Vicky Whittle, also when at operating temp, idle screw is all the way out, but revs don't drop under 1,000. So you've got a badly fitting butterfly. It hasn't been centered in the carburetor. Very common. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you've got wear in the carb. You know, so effectively, if the RPM won't drop, it's because the butterfly is not sealing off the hole. All right. So it's either been held open by something, or there is, too much clearance in the shafts, on bearings and stuff that excess air can get in. Or maybe you have, like an overrun valve or something in the butterfly, or a hole or something like that, that's allowing air through. So it's very common when people say, I can't get the RPM down, well, it's because it's not sealing the hole. That's the problem.
Yeah, I had a customer with a Jag, and he needed to have his cars rebuilt. I told him, I said, send him to a specialist, get them rebuilt. Once you get them back, we'll do the tuning. Well, I got them back, did the tuning, had that exact problem. So even specialists can make mistakes when setting up the discs.
Yeah.
But the best bet is to just take that carb off and have a look and see what's going on and verify that the disc isn't sticking. This Weber tune, I keep talking about this tune, but this Weber had two sets of discs, and the secondary disc on the secondary barrel was slightly open, and it was just, that was the way it had been set. Well, it was causing an air leak at idle, and I had to richen my mixture up to compensate for the secondary barrel being open and not applying fuel. So I closed the barrel down, I got a new disc for it, and I improved the airflow through the primary barrel. I was able to lean out my mixtures some more because I got better flow. So small changes to the carburetors and their discs actually have a big impact. Now, obviously, this is a 2-barrel Weber, but with a single barrel SU, they have to be able to close properly. So there could be wear on the disc, or like AC said with a poppet valve, that could be there, could be worn. I would take the carb off and have a look at least that and see if there's anything else that needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
While it's off, I'd recommend doing a rebuild with the wax stat.
Yeah. Also, check for the basics, like that the throttle cable is not holding the thing open, and also the fast idle screw is not preventing the throttle lever going all the way back into the closed position, i.e.
Yep.
the throttle fast idle screw is contacting the choke cam before it allows the butterfly to close fully. So just simple stuff like that. You'll be surprised how often that is the case.
Yeah, throttle cable issues and adjuster screws on the choke. Yep.
Yeah. Will Hamlin says, have to leave now, but this is fascinating. Thank you. Can you both tag team and stay on 24/7, please?
Well, sure.
Yeah. So if you pay us, we will. Because then I won't have to do any work. I'll just sit here answering questions. As long as I'm earning money, I don't care.
Yeah, we can talk about whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So Vicky Whittle, sorry. Thanks for answering my silly questions. I ask a lot of people about these silly issues to try and understand, and I just get shrugged off by being a young newbie. That is unfortunate. So sorry to hear that. I was training this weekend, and I was training somebody that was, 30 years of age. So not my age group, but that individual, Sam, was a very good mechanic, and he had all the right questions. And the trouble is you've got to have somebody that's willing to ask those questions so that you can actually learn. But you need to find the right people to actually ask those questions too in order to get the right answers. And there's not many of those.
Yeah. Well, that's how I encountered UACs. I saw the training videos, and I saw the on the road tuning videos, and I was like, no one I know can explain anything about these carburetors as well as you can. So I reached out to get the training because I realized you were the person I needed to talk to get the information I needed.
Yeah. So, and that's why I did the videos, because it was like, I was seeing lots of people setting up YouTube channels and making videos, and it was like a lot of the information was not helpful. So, or it was wrong. So it was a case of, right, I need to set up a YouTube channel here so I can at least put some information on that I know works and is available for other people to use, so that when I'm gone, there is at least a source of information that I know works, and you know, people can use it to help them with their cars. Okay, so Darren Robert Shaw, what are the symptoms of a Bosch sensor malfunctioning? There are many, but generally speaking, it won't read right. So typically it will go, you know, start reading 2 to 3 lambda, right? You know,
something silly.
Something silly. It won't read right, or it just goes off scale.
Yeah, mine gives me an error, just like E something, and then you look at the book and it tells you sensor malfunction.
Yep. Vicky Whittle, my carb does have a small hole in it in the disc. Any way to fill the hole? Yeah, I used to stick a self-tapping screw in it and then pin it in so it wouldn't come out. Or just buy a disc. You can buy a plain disc.
Yeah, you can solder them up too.
Yeah, and you can solder it up as well. I've done that as well. Just I've never been able to get them looking pretty when I solder them up, but but a small screw works as long as it's you know, Loctited in so it won't come out, or pinned in.
Yeah, Ian asked about other AFR gauge makes besides AEM. Well, I use Innovate. That's all I've used because they seem to work well. I mean,
Yeah,
I would do a
yeah.
sensor test if someone sent me a bunch of sensors and gauges for free, but I'm not going to go buy a bunch of them just to find out which ones are good and bad.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't see that one there, Ian. What's the other make of AFR gauge other than AEM? Innovate is the one I like. Okay, so yeah, Neil Bedford, Vicky, I'm 60 and still asking these guys daft questions. Vicky Whittle, thanks AC. At least someone will help. My family is a load of electricians and computer nerds. I'm the strange one who got the classic car bug.
Be very wary of letting the electricians work on your car because they use wire nuts to fix stuff. And it just doesn't work.
Wire nuts, yeah, not good.
Man, I've had to fix so many cars with those on them. It's just driving me insane.
So I'll put this up again for anybody. You know, I'll put the end up so you can see the number there. So that's the Bosch sensors I use for doing all my tuning.
Yeah, and you know it says LS1 Bosch sensor.
So yeah, I mean that's well, this is a LSU 4.9. Yeah, it just says the number there is LS17025, and then the Bosch number is 0. I'll read it out: 025801002500.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and the most expensive part of that kit is the sensor.
Yeah.
The gauges are cheap. I mean, out of $130, you're looking at a $100 sensor. So the gauge is only, 30 or something.
Yeah. So I think the Innovate ones are a lot more money. They're like 250 quid. Yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously it's coming with a Bosch sensor, so that's why they're more expensive. I had somebody that contacted me the other week that paid 70 quid for a gauge and it lasted about 10 minutes. Yeah. So don't buy a cheap gauge. Your engine is worth a lot more than a cheap gauge.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When you're relying on that to provide you clues as to how the engine's running, you want the best knowledge and information you can get.
Yeah. So when I'm out on the road, I have three of these with me, right? So there's one in the kit that I'm using, and I have 2 boxes with me with 2 new sensors, because if this goes down, I can't earn any money. So that's why I have to carry them, and I carry a third here, so that when I come home, I've got another one on the shelf just in case I need it. I have to have backups. Phaser boy, Darren, I've got 2 cheap AFR gauges to donate to the cause. Okay, I've got to put my fan back on again. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, send me a message. If you want to send them to me, I'll test them out. Like I said, I'm not going to go buy them myself to test them because I already have one that works. But I will gladly do a video on gauges if people send me gauges. Because all I need to do is plug them into my tuning kit right next to the other sensor, and I'll be able to compare side by side. So yeah, just send me a message.
Cathy's arm candy, wire nuts. That's my brother with a pile of junk XK120.
Yeah. Oh, that's a shame.
Vicky Will, rewired my whole Mini, maybe over-engineered with fuses and relays, but it works. Rebuilt my Mini motor with just a Haines manual. Rebuilt the car from shell to driving in 3 weeks.
Very good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well done.
And you know how it all works now. That's even better.
Yeah. Matt Steele's come back on after now using both AEM and Innovate gauges. I've found the Innovate reading to be a lot more stable. Funny that. Which one's the more expensive? Yeah.
Thanks, Matthew.
Vicky Whittle, test drive was 200 kilometres to a classic car meet. Yeah, well done. Gary Tillman, hi guys, I'm struggling to get a 1098 running. Compression is good, fuel to the plugs, base set the carb, timing is 8 degrees, the coil is 3 ohms. Okay, right, so what we don't have here is we don't know how that's fueling. The treble A is probably too rich. Don't know anything about the spec of the engine. You know, BP6 plugs, it says gap properly. You don't say what that is. 3 ohm coil, you want 25,000 maximum. All right. We don't know. Okay. And you're saying struggling to get it. Is that struggling to get it started, or is that struggling once you've got it started for it to run properly? RCM minis. I agree with Darren on the wire nuts. Crazy. The amount of cars that don't have correctly soldered joints or wiring connection. I must admit, wire nuts don't seem to be a thing in the UK, but clearly in America they are.
Yeah, everyone thinks that, well, it's good enough for a house, it's good enough for a car. It's like, yeah, I've seen things. It's not good.
I've seen things, yeah. I've seen things.
Well, I had a whole video on that Innocenti with the bad wiring, and that didn't even have any wire nuts. It was just, they just gave up on the fuse box and just started bypassing things. It was crazy.
Okay, Steve Bunce, A Series 1275 with pipe cam. How to confirm what it is and thoughts on timing. I can't remember what you said before. I need to go back and have a look at what you said before. My brain doesn't work that way. Sorry, Steve. I'll just look at your previous.
It was a while back.
It is a while back, so I'm just having a
Twin
rubbish.
HS2s.
Sorry?
Yeah, the twin HS2s on the 1275 midget.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, you know, again, what pipe cam? They do loads. You know, I need details. What's the compression? Yeah. What's the cam time in at, if possible? What modifications to the head? What rockers are you using? You know, I'm sorry to be awkward, but I do need more details. You have to remember, my mind works in specifications. So, you know, I'm looking at the whole package here. So if you ask me the timing, what's the best timing? I need to know the whole package, and then I can at least get you in the right area. All right. Rich Holder, thanks, chaps. Another great live session. I'm off for a beer. That's some notes content. Okay.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Richard. Appreciate you coming in. Jay Whitney, rebuilt HS4 carb with AFA needle, stock 998 with cam, 4810 head, LCB spares head intake. Runs probably a little richer than I like, idle. 13.5. Ed Richards on acceleration, but struggles to lean out of cruise. Okay. Why are you running 13.5 idle? Run 14.5 idle. Yeah. You don't say what ignition you got on it, but 13.5 idle is too rich. So, you know, turn that down a bit. So typically when I'm tuning an engine, I'll be running, if you're talking AFR readings, about 14.3 to 14.5. Yeah, maybe even 14.7 if you've got an ignition system that will run it. All right. So as I said, the other thing is the AFA doesn't suit every application. All right. So what you don't also say is what air filter you've got. So that needle has really been optimised for a stage 1 kitted A+ engine with a K&N filter and a drilled airbox. So if you're running the standard airbox, it's definitely not going to be. It's definitely going to be on the rich side. Okay. So as I say, the AFA needle is not be all and end all. It is another option for you to be able to get your car closer. All right. So as I said, lean off your mix because 13.5 is too rich at idle. So sometimes, and I did one just this weekend when we was training, we had to use an ABD needle to get the fueling right. You know, and that's due to tolerances.
Yeah, it's a really good needle, but again, not perfect for all engines because it's a bell curve distribution of what it applies to. This has got a 1.5 ohm coil.
Okay, Jay Whitney, plugs gap correctly and 1.5 ohm coil. Yeah, okay. So 25 thou, 1.5 ohm coil. Yeah, fine. As I say, turn your mixture down. You should be able to run 14.3 on that, no problem. In fact, we run an engine this weekend. It was running 0.98 to 1 on a 1.5 ohm coil, no problem at all.
What's the acceleration fueling? He says it enriches, but what does it go to?
Yeah, he said it struggles to lean out on cruise. So it's going to struggle to lean out on cruise when you've set it at 13.5.
Yeah, what is it like at 3,000 and 4,000 RPMs cruising?
Yeah. Okay. Neil Bedford got to dash, hit the road early. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom, guys. No problem at all.
Thanks, Neil.
Vicky Whittle, been looking at getting an HI44 Carb as an upgrade to my single HS4 on my 1275, but struggled to find one. Any cars I should look for? Maybe the salvage of 44 or 4. Well, I think you're in South Africa, is that right? So I don't know if the Austin Metro made it out there, but Austin Metros with a 1275 engine all came with a HI44, so that's the usual place to get one. But there were other vehicles that were fitted. The trouble is, the bigger ones tend to have other modifications on to suit the larger engine. So the reality is, you might have to save your pennies and look to buy a new one if you can't find one.
You might be able to find an HS or HS6.
Yeah, an HS6 off a Triumph. So one of the HS6s off a Triumph engine might be useful off a pair.
Yeah, I've got one here.
Say Whitney, we'll be changing to a rebuilt and slightly work 202 in the near future, but that could be years away. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so here's an HS6.
So that's the HS6. That'll do the same thing there, Vicky.
Yeah. Yeah, and this was off of a twin set. Now it came to me on a car, so it was just one half of the pair. But yeah, you can't get 1 3/4 HS6s.
Fan off now. We cool down. Okay, Gary Tillman. Yes, it's just cost and splat. Standard 1098 with just an RC fault with standard airbox drilled, 45 distributor with points set up, 15 thou. Right, okay. Fuel is new, using stabilizer. Okay. Well, the point is, I'd need to listen to your engine to understand what's actually going on. Right, because what you're telling me is it's not running right, but everything's perfect. Well, clearly it's not, right? Because if it was, it would run properly. All right, so I would need to go through your engine to actually understand what's going on. All right, so if it's not running properly, one of the first things to look at there is what condenser have you got, because if you're using a cheap condenser, that ruins any of the. Doesn't matter what else you fit on the engine, it's never going to run right if that condenser's not working. So, as I say, Gary, you know, I would need to be there really to understand what's going on with this engine.
Are you able to check the dwell angle instead of just going off of the 15th thou points cap? Because that'd be a more accurate way of confirming you're getting the proper dwell at your coil.
Yeah, Jay Whitney, K&N comb filter. So he's just talking about going back to the AFO needle comb filter, but we'll be swapping to a drilled box with K&N. You'll be surprised that will lean the fueling out. Yeah, that's normally what happens. It will lean the fueling out because there's a ram effect on it. And I was only doing this weekend with Sam at SR Auto Works, and we was doing some of the training when I was showing him the actual fueling leaned out. So with no filter on the back of the carb, it ran richer than with a drilled airbox. So when we put the drilled airbox on, it leaned it out. And he was scratching his head trying to work this out. And I said, it's all to do with inertial ramming. That's why it's doing it. So that engine that we was testing at that particular time will produce more torque with the filter on than without.
So I do want to mention the drilled airboxes. I saw a post on one of the mini groups that someone was selling a drilled airbox, and I looked at the picture and they had drilled it so large that the holes were actually on the edge of the filter element itself.
Yeah, I know the person, and I
sent
them a message because I said, all you're doing here is showing everybody where not to drill it.
Yeah, you got to be very careful where you put the holes.
Yeah,
and you can't go right up to the edge where it turns to make the dip into the carburetor. There has to be a certain amount of material away from it. Yeah, I have a good picture of one in one of my videos a while back. But yeah, you gotta know where the edge of the paper filter elements or the K&N filter elements are, and then stay off of that edge.
Okay, Vicky. Well, yeah, there are like 2 metros on there in the country. Okay, so you're just gonna have to search, unfortunately.
Yeah, the HS6 might be a better choice in terms of what's available for you.
Yeah.
And again, if you look at the front edge, they have the square profile.
So, Gary Tillman, yes, I have a dwell gauge. Okay, so Steve Bunce, car is new to me. Any way to identify which cam it could be? Yeah. So, an engine builder that I am, I would just measure the lift and duration and work it out from there. But most people don't know how to do that, and that's the problem. And I need to do a video on how to measure your cam so you can identify what cam you have. It's just that I haven't had time to do it.
Yeah, it's a tedious one to do. You almost have to be building an engine to do the measurements.
Yeah. So Gary Tillman's just said there he's not tested his condenser. I'll test it with a multimeter. Yeah. Do you know the best way to test it? Just fit another one. Buy a decent one from Distributor Doctor for a tenner. Fit that in, and
you can set the dwell to
substitution.
Like 50, 55 degrees on the dwell, something like that.
Yeah, I was talking about the condenser.
Well, yeah, but we were talking about, does he have a dwell gauge to check your dwell?
But he said he got one for 50p from a garage sale. The trouble is with this, how do you know it works?
Yeah, that's true.
What if the calibration's wrong? Having worked with old dwell meters, I can say that they all vary and they're not necessarily accurate. So some of the things I've done in the past is I've bought old dwell meters and made them work, and you have to calibrate them so they don't all work. Steve Bunce, compression is 130, 140, 135, 138. Service history states stage 1 cam, valve set at 15th thou. Yeah, as I say, doesn't tell us what the cam is, unfortunately. And that's quite low compression. So, the compression figures are not particularly good. So what I would ask there is what's the leak down reading? because if we've got a high leak down reading, that's why your compression's down. But if you've got a low leak down reading and you've got low compression, it means the static compression is wrong, and or it's got a big cam fitted and the compression has not been adjusted to compensate for the cam being fitted. Gary Tillman, it's nice to get some expert advice. Okay, yeah, apologies. Sometimes I can be a bit blunt, Gary. If I don't have the information, I can't give you the answer. The trouble is my depth of knowledge is such that, you know, if you tell me, like, if you ask me a question about what's the best timing, well, it'll be a different figure if you tell me the rocker ratio is different on the same specification, because it changes the breathing. All right, so that's why I need input. I need all that information about the engine to be able to give you a good answer. Yeah, so apologies, I can't always answer everything for everybody. Will Hamlin back again. Any way to test a condenser is failing under load? Yeah, just fit another one. You know, fit a decent one from Distributor, Doctor. 10 quid, done. Move on.
Yeah, they're like what, 2.2 microfarads or something.
I think is it 2.2 or is it 220 microfarads? Something. No, I can't remember. Yes, 220 nanofarad, 2.2 microfarads, something like that. Yeah. Can't remember. 0.22, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can do it. I can do the metric system
remember.
on that scale.
I just get a meter out and measure one. Okay. Yeah, comes back to life when it cools. That is classic dead condenser. Just fit a new one and move on.
Yeah.
Use it. Fit a quality one. Don't fit an aftermarket one. You know, fit the ones from Distributor, Doctor. He sells a good one, and they work. It's the only ones I carry now because it's the only ones I know I can fit on an engine, and I won't have to come back to it.
Yeah, and they will fail eventually if you never use them because they are a little chemical device.
Vicky Whittle, I'll try to find an HS6 in terms of manifold. Could I take my HS4 manifold and have the inlet grinded bigger, or would I have to find the correct manifold as well? Depends what manifold you got. So you could make it bigger, but you're better off probably just getting an aftermarket one that's already done. But I appreciate where you are, that may not be possible.
Yeah. Preferably with water heating, whatever you do.
Yeah. Steve Bunce, does the cam need to be measured before setting the timing? I do, because the timing is critical. So if you know what the cam is, then measuring the camshaft can help you dial that in more accurately, because there are inaccuracies in camshafts. Okay. And then knowing what those inaccuracies are, you can compensate by adjusting the cam timing. So, you know, a professional engine builder won't put a camshaft in without measuring it, so he knows what he's got. Right? That's engine building 101. You don't just take a cam out of a box and put it in. No, that's not a recipe for knowing what you're doing.
Yep. And good cams come with specs, like how much lift, how much degrees, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So you can measure it, because it is a manufactured product, and at the end of the day, it's manufactured to a tolerance.
And a good cam will be ground more accurately than the engine can hold it, right, in its bearings. So the tolerance on a CNC cam is like 0.2 of a degree, right? Your bearings in the engine can't hold it to that tolerance. It's more like two degrees, right, or 1 degree at best. You're never going to get down to the accuracy of a CNC grind. Okay, so knowing what you're starting with is the most important part of you know, building an engine. So I would never install a cam in any engine unless I'd verified what it is and where the lobes are, and, you know, the opening and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I agree. It's critical. Otherwise, it'll just run weird. You won't know why.
Demiquad, with the K&N cone, is there no ram effect? I've heard that short ram pipe with a 1/4 inch roll is good. Is there a decent filter with a ram pipe inside? Okay. So the problem with using a filter that goes on the back of the carb is there's just no ram length. Okay. So ram length is basically the path between where the air comes in and where it enters the carburetor. So if you have a standard airbox, this is 6, maybe 10 inches. Yeah. You don't get any of that with a smaller cone type filter that goes straight on the back of the carb. So you lose low speed torque and response.
It's better to have the ram pipe than nothing.
Yeah.
If you're going to run an open filter.
Yeah. So I always prefer a drilled airbox nowadays because I get better response out of the engine and it pulls more torque. Even if you measure, I've done it on a dyno. It pulls more torque up to peak. The peak might be ever so slightly less, but you've more than made up for it getting up there. Okay, Vicky Whittle. When driving a bit fruitfully to high RPM and then lifting off and under engine braking, I can hear some backfires as the RPM drops. I'm told it's normal. Is it really? Yeah. So it depends on how big your exhaust is and how much overlap you've got and how much fuel's going down the exhaust and all sorts of things. But bigger bore exhausts generally cause popping on overrun. Gary Tillman there to Vicky. Also be mindful you might need an abutment plate for the throttle cable and the mount. Yes, you will have to make that up.
Yeah, maybe a cable change.
Oh, you're quiet there, Darren. Can't hear you.
Yeah, I'll have to bounce out and come back.
So Darren's going to disappear and then come back in. Hopefully his sound will come back. So I think we're getting to the point where we need to call it a night. But let's see if he comes back. Should be coming any second. Yeah.
Back.
Beautiful and nice and clear. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, at about the 2-hour mark, the stream just kind of breaks and then it resets for me.
Okay. Weirdly, yeah.
I don't think they intend you to have that much to talk about on a live stream.
Yeah, Vicky Whittles just said that'll be fine. I can fabricate something. All right, Steve Bunce, I have to drop off, guys. Great advice. Thank you. Just trying to get it running smooth. All right, Steve. Yeah, I mean, as I say, some of these running problems. You know, if people come on and say, well, everything's set perfectly and it's not working. Well, if everything was set perfectly and it's not working, something's not set perfectly. That's my point.
Right, because otherwise something would have to be set imperfectly to make it work properly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we are just after 10 o'clock. I think we should call it a night.
Okay. Well, Vicky's got one more.
Okay. Vicky, I've basically got a straight pipe exhaust with the resonator at the back, but it's straight out the middle to the back of the car. You got one pipe, yeah. One silencer will tend to pop a little bit as well. So if you've got a twin box on there, it'll calm that down a bit.
Oh, Matt Steele's got a good question.
If you had to choose, which one would it be? Van or a pickup van?
Yeah.
Pickup I can't get in because I can't put the seat back.
Yeah, the pickup's a little tight. I do like the pickup. I already have an estate, so I think I'd choose the pickup because I have an estate already.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a van. I like the glass of the estate because you can see. The van is like a tunnel.
Yeah. So, Matt asked me about a question earlier, and people were saying to him they couldn't understand that if they had their car tuned and they go and change some things afterwards, that it would need tuning again. And Matt is absolutely right there. So if you tune an engine, or if me or Darren or any one of us tunes an engine, and then you go away and change the air filter or change the exhaust, it will change the fueling curve, and you will have to reset the fueling. So the point is, if you're paying for a tune-up, right, then that is the final stage of your modifications. So if you want it tuned, fit all your modifications before you have it tuned, okay? And then once it's tuned, don't touch it. All right, just use it as it is. If you then 6 months later decide to change the exhaust for something different, chances are it will affect the fueling and it will need to be retuned.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Don't change the configuration of the engine after you got the tune done.
Yeah. A few more questions coming in there. Yes. Yeah, Vicky White just says estate all day. My next minute's an estate. Nigel Kitcher, on the exhaust, would you go for RC40 or Maniflow, or 1 or 2 box on a Moog? Either or.
I like the twin box because it's quiet.
Yeah, twin box are quiet, and I might have a stainless steel one, so I only buy it once.
Yeah, I kind of don't enjoy the stainless steel because it sounds weird compared to a regular iron one, but that's just a minor preference.
Okay, Gary Tillman, thanks guys. Sound advice, and always hopefully catch you at one of the shows this year to AC. I look forward to seeing it. If you're at the Riviera run, I'll be there. Maybe too far for you, Darren. Yeah, might be a bit too far for Darren.
I'd have to have a bit more tuning this year to do that.
And unless somebody wants to buy him a ticket so he can get a plane over from Colorado to the UK.
Yeah, I can do a few tunes. Just coordinate a visit. Of course, I'll need all your stuff.
Demi Quad just said that, or get a wideband if you're going to change engine parts. Absolutely, and then if you have a wideband and you change anything, you can see the changes, and then you know if it needs retuning.
Yep.
Okay, Phaser Boy, thanks both. Information as always. Yeah, from Pete, Vicky White, standard Mini only has enough space in the boot for a toolbox and spare wheel. Back seat is the new boot. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, on an estate. Yeah, and we've always been saying, if you're gonna get your car tuned or you're doing tuning, you got to make sure those plugs are clean. If they're not showing clean, it's not right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I think we better draw it to a close there. It's 10 past 10. So thanks very much, everybody. Really appreciate it. We had a good turnout tonight. I think we had, well into the 50s at one point, so that's great. Appreciate that. Apologies again for the technical stuff. I have no idea what the sound was all about, but we got there in the end. Lots of restarting and and such, and then we get where we are.
Yeah,
so
we got there.
Yeah, we got there in the end. So I really appreciate you coming on and giving us a chance to answer your questions. And as ever, I will see you probably in a month's time, maybe 6 weeks. We'll see. It's busy this time of year, so we'll do our best to get back on. And I don't know if Darren's going to join me next time or if I'll have another guest. We'll see. So just keep an eye on my Facebook page to find out what's happening next time. Anyway, as ever.
Thanks so much.
It's time to go. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks, AC.